sport fans watching around the world, this is the moment you've all been waiting for.
Let's get straight into the episode.
Yeah, we heading for the sun. Charlie going high, I ain't tripping for the funds. Yeah, I won't start, I ain't tripping, I'm a stun.
Okay, before we start, I need to say something to you that I do say to everyone that comes on, but I would not be saying it if it wasn't true. You're sitting here because I find you interesting, and that's because you are an interesting person. I want to learn more about you, how you think, and how you feel, and I love that I have the opportunity to be able to share this experience. So I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you for sitting down. And ladies and gentlemen, I would not be sitting here without the man that I'm sitting across from. He has been a massive influence in my life in regarding how I want to carry myself as a man. He has also given me influence and inspiration to how I want to live my life and how I want others to perceive me. He is number one, the original Doxey. He is also my role model, and he's also my grandfather. He has done so much for himself, his family and his friends, his community and the people around him, and even his country in his service in the Australian Army. This is Graham Doxey. Yeah. How do you feel? First question, how do you feel?
Yeah, I feel good. I'm really impressed by what you said, because you don't tend to think about those things day to day. But yeah, very nice, and thank you.
Yeah, okay, cool. Well, I'm glad that you're feeling nice and comfortable. Most people, including myself, feel pretty nervous sitting across and having a deep conversation. Do you have, it wouldn't surprise me, but do you have any prior experience of interview-like situations or anything like that?
Yes. They started when I was a regimental sergeant major in the Army, running parades and all that sort of stuff. And because the local media always want to have someone to speak to about what's going to happen. I do it regularly as when I was an Albury councillor, and now as the Albury RSL president, I get asked to speak in relation to maybe there's a grant application coming our way, maybe there's something significant happening, Anzac Day, Remembrance Day. I only got a phone call this morning from the local Border Mail asking to be present Friday of next week at a presentation of some money. So, yeah.
Yeah, cool. Lots of experience then. Probably more experience than me, to be honest with you. And I, out of everyone that I usually sit down with, I have the most experience of being behind the camera. But it's good to know that I'm not alone in this experience. And I feel like we have a lot of stuff I would like to get through, starting with your whole career through the Army and then working in the museum and then being on and retiring from the Albury Council even. But I'll start off with childhood for you and what it was like, because when I think about it, I can't even remember a time without technology. I had a PlayStation from the age of 5 or 6, and I'm curious as to how you guys entertain yourselves back then without it.
Well, it was pretty simple because it didn't have the mobile phone, didn't have a pager, didn't have television. I was a kid, so I was born in Griffith in 1947, and at the end of the day, Mum and Dad would say, "Look, go out and play," and you go out and play, but be back for dinner, which was the evening meal in those days, and we'll be back before sunset, and that's the way it was. We'd entertain ourselves, playing chasings, hidings, catching tadpoles, that sort of stuff as a kid. Mm-hmm. Then when I moved to with the family to Gosford, it was a lot easier. Mum and Dad had a shop, and up on top of the shop there was a roof, and I could get up on top of the roof there, and they had an awning which I could sort of pretend that was my fort. Okay, and down the back lane there was an opportunity for an old house, a railway line. There was a railway bridge where I could get down there and throw crackers at the fish, and there were plenty of things to do. Yeah. Even making a billy cart. Oh yeah. You know, enjoying the scouts and the cubs and getting involved in all those activities. The people over the road we thought were rich. They had a television when it first came out. Yeah. So we would sneak over there in the afternoon and we'd watch Hopalong Cassidy, or we'd watch the Mickey Mouse Club. But we had to be home for dinner.
Okay, that's cool. It's pretty similar now. I feel like when I was a kid, I got the freedom to go outside and explore and be home by dinner. But I do notice that as time's going on and on, I feel like people are being more and more protective over letting people go out and explore, especially kids and in relation to their parents. Did you have like a freedom of how far you were allowed to go, or was it just Wherever you felt like going, just make sure you're home.
That area extended when I got a bike.
Okay.
You know, and the thing was to put the little bit of cardboard and a peg on it so it sounded like it was a motorbike making the noise. But when I was with in the Cubs and the Scouts, particularly as a Cub leader, I had to attend the Cub meetings, and by the time the meeting had finished, it was dark. So in those days, we did the right thing. We had lights on our bikes, we wore a helmet, and we had a bell on the bike.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Not known today.
No, not at all. I think helmets are pretty much the only thing that most people have. I'm pretty sure it's against the law not to wear a helmet, when you ride a bike.
It is against the law,
yeah,
but no one seems to enforce it.
Oh, okay.
And it's unfortunate for the family who have to deal with a tragedy.
That's true, yeah. That is
you know, not even a simple death. It could be a brain injury, which impacts on the family for life.
Yeah. I've witnessed being at the skate park and seeing people hit their head super hard when I was a kid, and that's why Mum always made me wear a helmet. Always, didn't matter how annoying it was. I always had to wear it. Always had to wear it.
Yeah, no, and that's a good thing. My simple philosophy is when a child goes to school, the minute you step outside the school classroom, you should have a hat on your head. Mm-hmm. If you play any contact sport, you should have a helmet, and you learn that from a kid. And it just becomes normal practice when you become a teenager and an adult playing even elite sport.
Yeah.
You know, the last thing you want, look at boxing, for example, the scattering of the brain.
Yeah, it's a dangerous sport. Yeah.
It is a dangerous sport.
Yeah, I do talk about boxing a lot on here because I'm excited to get back into it.
Yeah.
But we have a pretty good system in Australia. In amateur boxing, you have to wear headgear. You have to. And it does make a difference to the fight. You can't see properly, and punches aren't going to be as impactful when it comes to knockouts, but it's probably the best idea to wear headgear.
That might go like jumps racing.
Yeah.
It'll die out eventually.
Yeah, it probably will. Probably will. You mentioned school, and I did want to get to school, but before I did, I wanted to say I've noticed massive difference in myself when I was a kid to now, to see how kids are raised now, and I can imagine it was an even bigger difference with technology not existing when you were a kid in regards to devices at all. But do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing that children are becoming more just drawn to iPads and computers and phones at such a young age instead of being outside and exploring the way me and you used to?
I think we need to get a balance. You know, I've seen some of my grandkids spending too much time on their iPads where they might be seeking information, but they're not. They're playing games. Mm-hmm. There's a bigger world out there. iPads have got a place, computers have got a place, mobile phones have got a place. But there is such a big world out there, we should be exploring it. And our thirst for knowledge only comes from our own enthusiasm to get out there and explore all the opportunities. You know, it was okay sitting at a wooden hard-backed desk at school with the girl in front with long hair and trying to get her hair into the inkwell. But, you know, that was all fun, and spitballs and all that. Yeah. That was fun at the time. Mm. But we didn't have that equipment. You know, we had the chalkboard, and you had to take note of what the teacher said. And there was discipline in the classrooms in those days, or you got the cane.
Yeah.
And I don't mind telling you, I got the cane many, many times.
Yeah.
But that's part of life's experience.
Yeah, that's one thing that I wanted to talk to about school, is the physical punishment compared to now. But first of all, it was in relation to nowadays. I feel like a lot of kids are, what you just said, wasting time on their iPads, you know, playing games. Was there anything that was considered to be wasting time back when you were growing up, or was it just find something to do?
No, I think there was wasting time. There were these kids who used to go down to the back of the toilet block and have a cigarette. Okay. It was wasting time. Yeah. But, I don't think there were such things as abuse and picking on other kids and that sort of stuff. Sure, it always happened. It happened in the Scouts and the Cubs. I think it's unfortunately a human trait. But
yeah, it's part of life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I definitely agree. But yeah, I mean, like, so you're saying there wasn't really such thing as like, stop doing that, you're wasting your time, you should be doing this instead. Mostly just health related things like cigarettes or things like that.
Yeah, I think that point's quite valid, Jake. I don't remember being told by a teacher you're wasting your time. But we had a distraction with one particular teacher. He was very much into fishing. Mm-hmm. If we wanted to distract him from the subject, I think it might have been maths or algebra or something that was very mundane, we'd ask him how he went fishing last weekend, and he'd go off on a tangent, and that was good. Yeah. But we also had opportunity. I did woodwork and metalwork, but my main focus at school was Army Cadets.
Okay, cool.
That's the only reason I stayed at high school. I never finished high school, and I guess we'll talk about that later.
I think when we were talking about school and how you're saying you got the cane and things like that, nowadays you can't even hit kids, your own kids, like not even a smack on the bum or nothing. I don't have kids obviously, but I hear people that I work with tell stories about having to give their kid a smack on the bum in public, and massive scene every single time. Do you think it was acceptable to be punished physically as a kid in school back when you were going to school?
It was a period of time where it was normal.
Mm-hmm.
It's a matter of what becomes excessive.
Okay, yeah.
And some people take great delight in being able to, instead of giving 1 or 2 cuts with a cane, giving you 6 and maybe getting some satisfaction out of it. I don't know. But I think there's got to be a consequence to every action. If you do something what is perceived to be wrong, there's a consequence.
Yeah.
And you should be held accountable.
Yeah, I agree. So do you think that's where the cultural changes happen, because of those excessive moments, and it's like somehow we just have to draw the line in the sand of no contact at all?
No, I think life has just shifted on. I think we're becoming a little bit too sensitive these days. I have a problem with wrapping them in cotton wool. A child has got to fall at some stage, and they've got to learn from that experience. Running into a plate glass window, a child's going to do that at some stage.
Yeah.
You learn the hard way sometimes.
Yeah.
Life is not easy.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, life is not easy. And I think, like, I got smacked as a kid, and I'm happy to talk about it because I don't have any ill intentions towards mum or dad for anything like that. I think I needed it. I can agree I was a bit of a disobedient kid in a lot of regard. And I feel like today a lot of kids aren't being exposed to that kind of environment, and I think that's kind of what life is. Like, when you act like a fool, you're going to get smacked like a fool in the real world. And do you think we're entering a dangerous wave of the future society of kids growing up, of just not having to deal with consequences?
I think only time will tell.
Okay.
I think the jury's out on that.
Okay.
I think I remember duster out and using the handle that the kids used to hide under the bed. You had to get them somehow.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah. I hear you. Is the dog all right?
You want me to stop and I'll get rid of him?
Yeah, it's fine. There'll be many moments where I'll stop the podcast. It's no issue.
Yeah. You're annoying.
All right. I do want to get back to your mindset when you were younger, and you did mention that you were in school to do the Army Cadets. But I like the topic we're on at the moment with the technology and how kids are being raised and the disciplinary actions and things like that. And I have definitely noticed, just with the younger people I know, a way different mindset and culture in regards to, it might have also been because of COVID and people were forced to stay inside, but I don't see an urge for younger people to get outside and to explore anymore. So I'm predicting it's kind of entering I don't know the right word to use, but a non-exploration society. People are going to be stuck inside in the future, drawn to the technology all the time. And I want to know if you think that's an improvement on the way things are going, or kind of like non-beneficial.
I think it's non-beneficial, but once again, it's a balance. I think, and my observation is that people are thinking about themselves. They don't see big picture. We've been away on a cruise recently, and it's interesting to watch how people interact with other people. Some people have just got their own mindset. They'll stand at the end of a set of steps in the way of other people.
Yeah.
There are people that you are trying to get out of a lift, and they couldn't care. They want to rush into that lift because it's their right. Mm-hmm. People are very, very much all about themselves, self-centric, and I think it'd be nice to see the world change, but it is the way it is at the moment. You've got to accept it. It's our place in life.
Yeah.
If we don't like it, we go somewhere else.
Yeah, I do agree that I have to accept it. So I try not to worry about things that aren't in my control either. It's just I do notice it, and as you're saying, like I do see, because people are so individualized at the moment. I see it when I'm out as well. I'm walking through the shops and everyone's just head down on their phone. I can't help myself. I say, excuse me, a bit more of a tone than I should have. And I kind of blaming technology for it, but I'll try and steer away from that side of the podcast because I do go into depth with some people about it. But I'll go back to when you're a kid. So you're saying you only stayed in school because you knew you wanted to be in the Army Cadets.
It is true. It is true in the latter couple of years in school, because I never finished high school.
Okay.
I couldn't wait to get out. I didn't like school, but I stayed at school for the Army Cadets. That was my thing. And I guess it comes back from both my mum and dad were both in the Army during World War II, and that had an influence on me. But it was progressively, you go from Cubs to Scouts to Rovers. It's a natural thing to want to be part of an organisation that has rules and discipline.
Yeah, I understand that. I've never been exposed to any kind of environment with Scouts or anything like that growing up. Was it part of the actual school, like, did the school offer that program, or was it outside of school, like, and you had to finish school in order to get into it? Or you had
No.
You had to, not to finish school, you had to be in school to get into it.
You had to be in Army Cadets, you had to be in the school.
Okay.
So Gosford High School had Army Cadets, and I joined the Cadets and then moved up from cadet to corporal and then to sergeant and drum major.
Okay.
And then I
age were
left.
you by that time? Sorry for cutting you off. What age were you by the time you became drum major?
How old?
Yeah.
I probably around about 16.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, or 15. I left school at 16.
Yeah.
Went to work for Woolworths.
Okay, you went to work for Woolworths straight first. I did not know that. Yeah, cool. Then what age did you actually enroll to be in the Army? How long did you work in Woolworths for?
About a year.
Yep.
And then I joined the Army at 17.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I joined the Citizens Military Forces in Gosford originally. And then I then joined the regular Army when I was still 17.
Wow. I thought it was 19. I didn't know it was 17. That's younger than I thought.
17, if you're an apprentice, you could have gone in there or a musician at 15 and a half.
Wow.
Back in those days.
Wow. And what was the early years like when you first enrolled? Like, what was the environment like, and what was the tasks you had to carry out and things like that? In joining the Army when you were 17.
I wanted to be an infantryman because I was an infantry in CMF. And that was one day a week, the CMF, and then every couple of weekends you do a weekend camp. I just love the camaraderie. I love the discipline. I love the opportunity to be able to learn about different weapons and different equipment, radio, telephone procedure, ambush drills, all that sort of stuff. And that led me to join the regular Army and go to Kapooka.
Okay, cool. So was that time your first Kapooka? Where is Kapooka?
At Wagga.
Wagga, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I'm pretty sure you did, was it 12 trades in the Army, or was it 13?
I had about 13, what they call employment category numbers.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I'm curious as to, like, from the first one, what your job and your tasks would have been, and how old were you, and then how long did you do that for until you got to the second one? I know it's a bit of stuff to get through, but I'm genuinely curious. I don't know any other way to ask the question.
No, it's a good question. I thank you for asking it. Is that when you join the Army and you don't have a particular stream to go into, you have to then perform well. And I think it was about 10 or 12 weeks back in those days in 1965. And you had to be in our top 10 in the platoon to go to infantry. Okay. Had to be a good shot, had to be well at fieldcraft and weapons handling.
And sorry to cut you off, but how many in a platoon?
In a platoon, our platoon was round figures about 50.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the top 10 gets going. Okay.
Yeah, because in those days they were then bringing in national service. And they're going to put national service mainly into the infantry battalions to go to Vietnam. Mm-hmm. So regular soldiers, they wanted to become specialists. So even though I got infantry, and then I did my infantry training at Ingleburn in 1965 still, where the skilled infantry was, you learn all your infantry skills training there. Then you get allocated to a regular battalion, all right, which is up to 900 in strength.
Wow.
Because I was then only 18, I was posted to the 3rd Battalion, which was in Woodside, South Australia.
Okay.
They had just come back from 2 years in Malaya, and they weren't going to Vietnam for another 2 years. So I would have sat there until I was 19. You had to be 19 to go to Vietnam. Mm-hmm. So while I was in the 3rd Battalion, and because we were regular soldiers, and they were going to bring in national service into the 4 rifle companies, we went into the specialist company called Support Company. Support Company had mortar platoon, signals platoon, anti-tank platoon, and assault pioneers. I was put into assault pioneers, and they are primarily the engineers of the infantry. We learn watermanship, we learn bridging, we learn demolition, mines, booby traps, etc. So I then went off to Ingleburn again to do another course, an assault pioneer course for 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. Then came back, and then we assisted with the training of the national servicemen through. They were trained directly into the battalion, rather than go to like a puka. It wasn't big enough to hold them and train them. Then I was sent to the School of Military Engineering to specialise in demolition, mines, booby traps, and explosives. Then I came back. I'm 19 at this stage.
Yeah, wow. So
and I was selected to go to the Special Forces, or I could have gone to Vietnam. Mm-hmm. So I was chosen to go to Vietnam. Mm-hmm. I went to Vietnam as a reinforcement to the 6th Battalion, and then I joined the 7th Battalion. Anyway, we can talk more a bit when you ask another question.
Yeah, no, I'm enjoying it. It's good information for me, because I've never had the experience to sit down and properly ask you, and I've always been waiting for a good opportunity, and I think this is the best opportunity, to be honest. I get to share it with my friends as well.
Great.
When you went to Vietnam, was that in the mix of what was like war at the time? Like what's that movie? I just watched a recent movie called
Danger Close.
It wasn't Danger Close. It was called Apocalypse Now, and it just followed one silly crew of
It's American.
soldiers. Yeah, it is. Yeah, true.
It's American. Our involvement was different.
It was different. What was our involvement like in Vietnam?
Ours was more, because we're only a small force with limited opportunity and provisions and capacity, etc. We have a different technique where, for example, we'd go out on a clearing patrol to clear an area in front of us, where America would simply sit back in their positions and fire all their machine guns in there. Wow. To make sure no Viet Cong there. But the problem with that is you're giving away the position of your automatic weapons, and but it's not critical of the American system. It's the lazy man's way of doing it when you've got limitless supply. Mm-hmm. You know, they had whatever they wanted, and they never took anything back to America when they left.
Oh, they didn't?
No. What's the point? Because they got a production system in place that needs to replace everything. Mm-hmm. That keeps people employed. Mm-hmm. So they take everything out to the ocean and dump it off the side of a aircraft carrier. Wow. Well, we brought everything home.
Yeah, we did.
And made sure we counted it.
Yeah, cool. I have noticed, I've seen a small documentary one time about how in Vietnam there's like an entire like society built on the reselling and resupply of army supplies. Like they've built like shops with like cigarettes and food and things like that back in those days. Did you ever experience anything like that? Did you notice that the American or the Australian army supplies were being used by the Vietnamese people in trade? That
was called the black market.
Okay.
And I've got no doubt that it was being done. I never saw, never exposed to that whatsoever. Mm-hmm. But I was aware it was going on, because it happens, I guess, in all walks of life. Mm-hmm. There's always someone trying to make a quid out of something.
Oh, so it was the actual, like, the bad-minded soldiers who were selling it to them. I thought it must have been them stealing it or finding the supplies they'd left behind or things like that. But it could have been either, I guess. Yeah, I didn't think about it like that. Did you spend much time with any soldiers from other countries like America? Did you spend much time with anyone like that?
The time we spent on operations was to get into an operational setting. We had to use American assault helicopter companies, and they'd fly in 30 or 40 helicopters and we'd hop on board. We'd fly forward into wherever the landing zone was going to be, and they'd drop us off. Air Force, Army, Australian Army only had, Australian Air Force had a limited number of helicopters, 9 squadron. They would do our resupply of ammunition, resupply of water, resupply of rations. And they also conducted medical evacuation for wounded and deceased soldiers. Yeah.
Okay. So most of the relationship you had in regards to with the American soldiers was through the aircraft support. Is that most of the relation you had?
Well, my first, interesting enough, on the 12th of December 1966, Qantas were on strike, and they were flying then reinforcements to Vietnam. So they were on strike. The pilots were on strike. So America sent out 2 Starlifter aircraft from Clark Air Base in the Philippines, and they landed at Mascot. 3:15 in the morning, so no one would see us leaving. Pretty terrible, isn't it? Your own country.
Yeah.
We boarded the Starlifter aircraft, our large transport aircraft. We had to wear a civilian shirt, and our rifle was covered in wrapped up in a sandbag, because we were flying over Indonesia.
Wow.
We flew to Darwin, refueled, then into Clark Air Base, and then from Clark Air Base into Vietnam. So that was my first actual exposure with America.
Okay.
They had these 2 massive aircraft that flew. I can't remember what number we had on board. There might have been 80 or 100 on board each aircraft.
Okay, and if it wasn't for the American aircraft coming from the Philippines to pick you up, was it meant to be the Australian Qantas airplanes that came and picked you up that day?
There were no... Qantas, yeah.
Qantas was meant
Qantas were due to take us
to
Vietnam. And in fact, Qantas ended up flying 600 missions in and out of Vietnam, I've later discovered.
Okay.
And they were nicknamed the Skippy Squadron because of the kangaroo on the tail of the aircraft.
Yeah, okay.
But it's interesting because just exploring my other exposure with America was when we were on patrol, we'd always carry at least 5 days rations. And the first pack might be 3 days Australian and 2 days American, and then 3 days American, 2 days Australian to make it out. But we had very basic rations, Australia, where America had, you name it, they had biscuits and they had cigarettes and they had chocolate in their ration packs and all that.
Yeah, okay.
Just amazing. And, you know, yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. I thought that we'd have a very similar kind of infrastructure, and especially in the army as them. Just maybe a smaller scale. I didn't think that there'd be different food and things like that as they have. Yeah,
massive difference. Even our rations when we're back in camp, there might be a great big can of tin milk. All that stuff came from the American system. We'd have powdered eggs. So we were supported very strongly by America.
Okay, well that's good to know. That's very good to know. Did you find that the training you were getting here in Australia leading up to going to Vietnam was it much of a surprise when you got to Vietnam, or did you have the right prior knowledge as to what you were going to get yourself into when you got there?
I thought our training was very, very well adapted because early instructors had come out of Malaya and Borneo, and of course they were operating in a jungle setting. Didn't always operate in a jungle setting. They might have operated on a paddy field in the open, or it might be a bamboo plantation. But a lot of it was early jungle.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. So you were kind of equipped. And what about the fitness level? Was it in training? Were you like getting a bit more of rest time and things like that? When you got to Vietnam, you were a bit more like exhausted.
Oh no, we were battle fit.
Okay.
It was very hot, of course. You know, I remember one occasion our machine gunner had come back from R&R in Hong Kong or somewhere, and he was sent straight back out to operations. It was a very hot and humid time, and he got heat exhaustion. And to watch someone go under with heat exhaustion is a very scary thing. They get disillusioned, and yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. I've never experienced or know anyone who's ever had anything like that.
Yeah. The idea is to drink plenty of water.
Yeah.
Keep water up.
Mm-hmm. Is it much hotter there than it is here in Australia and Vietnam?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Because what is it, temperature or just humidity or both?
Humidity.
Okay. Does it get much hotter than like 40 degrees over there?
I don't remember. Like I said, I was 19 and 20, and it was just, for want of a better word, it was exciting because it was different. You're away from home. You're mixing with other people. You're doing things that are exciting and different and new.
I guess the weather wasn't probably the least thing on your mind, with all that going on.
Oh, yeah. It is what it is. No one ever complained because the next person was exactly the same. They were hot, tired, exhausted. You never got enough rest in the field. You're constantly on the move. If you're doing an ambush at night, you were obviously awake most of the night. Then up next morning, back onto patrols again, carrying all your equipment. And we were like mules.
Yeah. We
had a lot of gear on the back.
How much weight worth of gear did you reckon you had?
I don't know what the weight was, but for example, we might be carrying 5 days rations. Yeah. That was pretty heavy. It might be a big stack like that. You had to cull it down. You couldn't take it all with you. Mm-hmm. You try and look for 1 or 2 main meals. And you'd have grenades, you'd have ammunition, you'd have explosives. You might have a chainsaw on the back if you're going into an area you needed to cut an LZ for a helicopter. You might have other bits and pieces that you needed for a particular exercise or what do you call them? Not combat situation. Mm-hmm. You had an idea of where you were going, so you needed extra bits and pieces.
Yeah, I can imagine there'd be someone with like fuel, and there'd be someone else with like medical supplies. And
yeah, well, you couldn't fly everything in. You couldn't because you gave away your position. Mm-hmm. So you'd fly to a certain spot, then you'd fan out and you'd walk in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you didn't want to give away your position or where you were going to the Viet Cong.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have any memories that stand out the most, like things that were just so like exciting and just surreal to be a part of from being in Vietnam?
For me, it was riding on the helicopters.
Oh, that would have been cool.
I wanted to become an American helicopter pilot.
Okay.
They only trained for 6 weeks and they were made warrant officers and they flew helicopters. But to enlist in the American Army, you had to go to nearest base, and that was in Hawaii.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was one of the things I would have liked to have done. But there are many things at that age you would like to do.
Yeah.
But reality is you come home, you get married, you have kids.
Yeah.
That's how life goes sometimes.
Yeah, okay. So when you got back home, what was the... One thing I actually I'm curious to ask you is I watched a documentary on Netflix recently called Vietnam War, something to do with the Vietnam War. And then explained how in America, when a lot of soldiers got home, it was in the middle of a peace movement and a lot of people were just ill-informed of what the situation really was, and they got a lot of backlash. Was that something that Australia suffered with at all?
We had the moratoriums, street marches, demonstrations. We had Save Our Sons. We had conscientious objectors being jailed. So all that went on. There were, when a battalion came back, if they came back together, because bearing in mind I was a reinforcement, they marched through Brisbane. Idiots would run out there with red paint and throw it over them and spit on them and that sort of stuff, call them baby killers. Mm-hmm. I never physically experienced that. There are a lot of veterans that said they did, but I never saw that.
Yeah. When I seen that, I didn't know that was a thing until last year that people haven't experienced that. It just blew my mind. I couldn't understand.
Well, it's not the soldiers' fault. It's the government that sends the soldiers away and they do their job.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, I'm the president of the Albury RSL, but back in that particular period of time, there were RSL clubs that did not take on, rejected membership from Vietnam veterans on the basis that they were being run by World War II veterans and said, that's not a real war.
Oh, wow.
Well, a real war is where you get killed.
Wow.
And they had the same thing happen to them from the First War veterans. So we're trying to stop that right now happening to Afghanistan, Gulf War veterans.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, they're all veterans.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
You know, and each war is different. Each person's understanding and their life after that is different. No two people are the same.
Agreed. So do you think it was just a mindset over time that was like, it was harder for us than it was for you, and then we actually had to do the hardship, and you guys have it easier, and that's what?
Oh, absolutely. For example, the Second World War lasted for 5 years, but not every soldier was away for 5 years, apart from those that were prisoners of war, because they came back, they reorganised, they went somewhere else, they came back, reorganised, went somewhere else, And we had soldiers that did 12 months, we had soldiers that did less than that, for a whole bunch of reasons.
Yeah, okay.
And soldiers are different, An infantry soldier is different to at the task force headquarters in Nui Dat, the operational base, as opposed to a cook or a school teacher down in Vung Tau, or stores where they'd work from 8 o'clock to 4 o'clock. Take the uniform off, have a shower, put the civvies on, and duck into town. Well, we couldn't do that.
Yeah.
We were in the barbed wire camp guarded area. And if you were in camp, and we spent most of our time out on operations, that's what we were all about.
Yeah.
And if we were in camp, you'd take your turn on picket at the gun post.
Yeah, I hear. What would you do did you have any time to relax at all, or was it just non-stop for the entire time you were there? You were on a mission trying to get to somewhere new, or did you have time to take a break, regather, enjoy a little bit of time together?
Oh, you might. Well, there were 2 occasions throughout your 12 months. You could do R&R, rest and recuperation, and you had a choice of going to Singapore, Hawaii, Bangkok, Taipei, or the married fellows could come home to Sydney, and that was very, very hard. They had to go back again. And that was 5 days, so I was fortunate to go to Taipei, to Taiwan.
It was only 5 days.
There was two Australians on the aircraft, the rest were Americans, and on Pan Am. So we had 5 days up there. It wasn't the cultural tour that you do today.
Okay. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
And I was fortunate in March '67 to be selected for the officers selection board to go to Singapore. How that happened was there was a fellow, Gary, and I selected from the 6th Battalion, a couple from 5 RAR and a couple around, about 12 of us. We were brought out of operations and that overnight, clean set of greens, pack up quick bag, and up to Saigon. And they said, bad news, fellas, we're going to send you to Singapore tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
God, so what do? Got on the grog.
Yeah.
Anyway, as you would, 19-year-old soldier straight out of the jungle.
Yeah.
We arrived in Singapore, and they said, bad news, fellas, we're going to put the 4th Battalion, who was in Singapore, in the barracks through forward. Could be here for a week. I think we had 9 or 10 days in Singapore.
Yeah.
Anyway, that is another story.
Yeah.
But So, but back in, and then you had an R&C, rest and convalescence. You had 5 days down at Vung Tau. All right, and the same thing. They had bars down there, and they had recreation areas and that sort of stuff. You'd lock your rifle up, and you didn't have to worry about that for the 5 days. You get out of your greens, put some civvies on, and then you'd at the end of that, you'd put your uniform back on and grab your rifle, up on a truck and back up to the task force base for a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. But back in the task force base, if you were back in camp, long as the gun picket was manned, they might have scheduled movie that night or something.
Okay.
And they'd open the boozer up. Cans of beer were about 5 or 10 cents a can in those days.
Wow.
But they they're only 44-gallon drums then with ice and another carton, ice and carton. They put the rubbish on top. That'd be the black duck, which is the emu bitter and all that rubbish. You had to drink that to get to the decent stuff.
Yeah.
But they were days before the ring pull can, so you had a can opener.
Oh, okay. Yeah, wow.
But they were very strict because alcohol and weapons with ammunition are a bad combination.
Yeah.
There are about few incidents over there where people were shot or hand grenade dropped into someone's bed.
Oh, really?
That didn't go down too well. So, and you consume a bottle of vodka because it was cheap. Mm-hmm. You start off with vodka and orange, but then you just get rid of the orange. What a waste of time. And you wake up next morning going,
Yeah, and I can imagine you just had to get straight back into the tasks, eh? Yeah, well, crazy. When you finally left at the age of 20, did you say you were 20 when you left Vietnam?
Yep, I had my 20th birthday over there.
Okay. Were you relieved, or were you like, did you have the same mentality you had when you got there? So
Different.
I'd
grown up a lot, I thought. I think at that stage I was an alcoholic.
Okay.
Because it was just that opportunity. I remember the first night home I got drunk. Not good. But that's the way, because you're talking with people who don't understand. They weren't there. You're a different person. It changes you.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can't relate, but I can imagine.
Not for the best either.
Yeah.
Not for the best.
And did you have friends that you came home with that you stayed in contact with straight away?
From Vietnam?
Yeah.
No.
No.
I was met at the airport by my mum and dad and my then girlfriend. And then we went up to Gosford. That night I went to the Gosford RSL, had a welcome in, presented them a plaque, all that sort of normal stuff. I had about a month or so's leave. Then we went I got posted to Kapooka.
Okay.
As a weapons instructor.
Weapons instructor. Okay. So let's go into what life was like after that. So how long did you work as a weapons instructor for?
Yeah, I got posted to Kapooka in, I think it was January 1968. And as an instructor there, you are allocated to a platoon. And in each of the platoons, you have a section you look after. And in the daytime, you do lessons. So it might be a 40-minute period lesson on the characteristic safety stripping and assembling the self-loading rifle. Then another platoon would come past. You do the same lesson again. Very monotonous. Or it might be grenade 1, grenade 2, that sort of stuff. But then you're also responsible for the section you had. At the end of your working day, you'd have to go across and see how they're doing, look after them. One, to make sure they all have their meals, make sure they clean their equipment, they're doing any study they have to do, and next morning you'd be back at it again.
Okay.
Well, after about 6 months, I got sick of the same thing day in and day out. It was very mundane. I was at the rifle range instructing shooters, so they're looking for military police at that stage. I was already a corporal in the infantry. And those days we had 7 pay groupings. Okay. I was up on a group 6 pay.
Okay.
The technicians and specialists were on 7. Military police were on 4 because they were drivers. That's a driver's trade. So being 6, the only one position I had to go to in the military police was at the military prison as a drill instructor there. So that's where I went. Interesting time there was we had conscientious objectors in there. We had Simon Townsend from Townsend's Wonderworld. He'd just been moved to Ingleburn for his own protection. We had William White. We had a couple of fellows in there that were doing manslaughter time in Vietnam. Very interesting time. But once again, grog crept into my life at that stage still.
Okay. And was it community based? Was everyone kind of drinking at the same time?
It was very much so.
Yeah.
It was cheap. A pint of beer was really, really cheap. So why would you drink a schooner when you have a pint?
Yeah.
It's an unfortunate part of it. And the same thing with smoking. Everyone wanted to smoke. You do a 40-minute lesson for a 5-minute smoke, fall out. And I go, oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a friend today who did 3 years before he got in, I think he was in infantry, before he got medically discharged for a problem with his back. And he said that he just smoked and smoked and smoked the whole time. And I couldn't believe it. I thought it would be the opposite. I thought everyone would be strict diet, strict food, strict fitness, but it's not the case at all, apparently. Yeah, it definitely surprised me. These men that you're referencing that were in the jail as you were guarding as a army police, what were they in trouble for? Was it things to do with being in Vietnam, or was it things to do with crime here in Australia?
But
Okay.
under the Army Act, once you go to Vietnam, and you could have been someone else attached to the Defence Force, you are under the Army Act, and the Army Act still allows for death penalty, or then in those days. So there was a fellow in there named, I won't mention his name here, was doing 18 months for manslaughter. Mm-hmm. He was infantry, he had fallen forward, and his finger was on the trigger, and he'd killed the fellow in front of him. All right. So he got manslaughter. Another fellow was doing 90 days, Navy fellow, for taking the captain's boat.
Okay.
Others were doing 89 days and you soldier on. 90 days you're discharged. There were people that mainly are there for AWOL, absolutely without leave. There were people there for assault. There were a whole variety of different people. If you were awarded more than 168 hours, you went to the military prison.
Okay.
168 hours is 7 days. Mm-hmm. All right. So if you got awarded 178 hours, you'd go to your local unit cells. Mm-hmm. All right. But the military prison had a structure. They had badges. You'd have a yellow badge or a green badge or a red badge, and they gave you different privileges. So
as an officer or as an inmate?
As an inmate, there's no officers in there.
Okay.
You were stripped before you got down there. And my job became, when a soldier, sailor or airman came in there, and most of them were soldiers, very few airmen came in there. The staff were Army, Navy, Air Force there. And my job was to give them what was called reception drill, to see how far they could be pushed.
Okay.
So it'd be left turn, right turn, about turn, keep them going, kit above their shoulders, all that, above their head, all that sort of stuff, and that would determine where they would go.
Okay.
They'd go into the correction yard,
yeah,
or go into B block, which is solitary confinement block.
Yeah. Okay, and the more they listened, the more they did, would that get them into the isolation or into the regular part?
You did what you were told and towed the line. You went to the correction yard,
yeah,
and you could work your way up to a yellow badge and get certain jobs in the daytime, different privileges, a green badge and a red badge. We had two at one stage, and then most of them one. They would be in their own cells that were not locked, because the whole lot was barbed wire and towers and that sort of stuff. And they were the trustees, so they had certain jobs to do. And that's why you work yourself up into those positions. They might be 4 cigarettes a day. There was a line. You tow the line, you light the first person's cigarette, then they go along and light everyone else's cigarette. So the smart ass, you'd put it at the front of the line, you'd light their cigarette, because all the matches were controlled in the cigarettes, and they had to go along and light everyone else's cigarette first before they could go theirs.
Oh, wow.
Lights out at 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Every bit of brass and all your uniform, including inside your hat, the chin strap, the little buckle that holds it there, the eyelets in your boots, everything had to be polished.
Okay. So they weren't wearing the typical like jail outfits. They were wearing the uniform.
Oh, uniform.
Okay.
They were servicemen under sentence.
Yeah, okay. I like the system. It sounds like a good system, especially the way you can kind of get rewarded by good behaviour through discipline. I wonder if that is something that we should try and incorporate into normal jail, or do you think it wouldn't work? Because I think
it's already there.
Okay.
But I think it's a matter of who the staff are, for a start. There could be some mean people wanting to take those jobs on. There can be some people that really want to make some differences and change, and they get held back a bit sometimes. But it's a matter of how far you go and how you do it. You know, obviously, you can go in there and end up coming out with a degree, you know, and which the government's paid for. and some people turn themselves around. But if you mix bad with bad, you'll get a bad outcome.
Yeah. I do think that is true. I think. I don't know. I have a mixed feeling towards the jail in general. You know what I mean? I don't have enough experience to have a proper opinion on it. I just see it as in a society where you put someone in and they're just going to mix with worse people than they've got. People who did even worse crimes than they did, or you put a drug dealer in with other drug dealers, and then I see it as a dangerous thing. But I like the idea of how the army did it, where you follow discipline and then you end up in better position, and then you can carry that same life lesson on the outside. So
yeah, we tried to turn that around during national service to conduct training so they had some useful purpose. Otherwise they're doing mundane tasks that don't help anyone.
Okay, so they were doing tasks that actually benefited other people.
Oh yeah.
Okay, that's cool. So real jobs. They're doing real jobs.
They might be helping in the kitchen. They might be just a person who picks up all the food scraps and carts the trolley around with the food scrap going into a bin somewhere. But they're the jobs that gave them something to do.
Mm-hmm. So how old were you at this time? So you said 21, 22, 23.
Yeah.
Okay. And were most people around your age or older or younger?
A bit of both.
Yeah.
There were obviously the military police that had come back from Vietnam working there, because I only spent 13 months there, and then I moved on to patrols in Sydney, and then Singleton and back to Sydney again. Mm-hmm. Riding motorbikes and caged trucks, locking up drunks and that sort of stuff.
I didn't know the army did things like that here in Australia.
Yeah, military police, yeah.
Okay. So
we had our own investigation sections, and we had AWOL squads. They were generally New South Wales police doing national service, and they were a whole bunch of HQ Holdens, unmarked cars, no uniforms on, kicking down doors of draft dodgers and bringing them in.
Oh, really? That's pretty crazy. I didn't think of draft dodgers. So was there a drafting at the time in Australia? Yeah. I did not know that. Were you drafted or were you
No, I joined drafting. It came in at 20.
Yeah, okay.
It did 2 years.
Okay. And what was the criteria for someone to get drafted at that stage? Like, between what age and physical health?
When you turn 20, your number of your birthday was drawn out of a barrel.
Okay.
And if that came up, you were in. If it didn't come up, you were out.
Mm-hmm. And it was against the law, obviously, to not go, and that's why...
Oh, yeah. You got arrested and you went to prison.
Yeah. And was it the military prison or was it like normal Australian jail?
Military prison.
Yeah.
Excuse me, first off. And they had what was an organisation called Save Our Sons. That was the mothers of these kids.
Oh, okay.
Protesting and that sort of stuff.
That's where that comes from.
Yeah.
Okay. And was that a thing that happened overseas as well, or was it just Australia that happened?
No, it happened in America and big time.
Okay.
Big riots and as you'd expect in America.
Yeah.
Everything's big time.
Yeah, everything's big over there.
Only because of their saturation of numbers.
Yeah. I understand that. When these people came in who didn't want to be drafted and they ended up going to the jail in there, how was their character? Were they also doing the same like due diligence where they would wear the correct uniform every day, polish it?
No, they weren't. That's why Simon Townsend, for example, one of them, was moved to Ingleburn for his own protection, because whilst he was holding everyone back, they objected to that. So he was likely to be a threat. Mm-hmm. So if you're doing drill on the drill square, you put someone like that in the middle. If they didn't want to turn, the others would make them turn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get that. So you did working in the prison there for 13 months, and then you said you went to serve time in Sydney, Ingleburn, Sydney, is that correct?
Sydney, and then to Singleton,
sorry.
And then back to Sydney again.
Okay. And how many years did that stretch over?
18 months.
18 months.
Yeah, then I left and went back to infantry again.
Okay. And was it a different type of training, or was it the same as it was when you first went?
It was. I went straight to a battalion. Mm-hmm. Went straight to the 5th Battalion at Holsworthy as a section commander, and then I did my parachute course there. did my time with Army recruiting, and then did my sergeant's course there,
Okay.
which I topped.
Yeah, cool. Oh, top. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I like parachuting. I want to stick to parachuting for a bit. How many times did you get to use a parachute or jump out of a plane?
The parachute course is eight jumps, with equipment, without equipment, night jump, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, cool. Very cool. Did you find it frightening or not? Jumping out of a plane? Because I'm going on Sunday. Me and Kyle are going on Sunday.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I remember my first jump at Newcastle there, out of the aircraft, and the instructor yelling out, "Open your eyes!"
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Wow. That's cool. So then you say some jumps with equipment, some without. What type of equipment did you need to jump out with?
Well, they had you had a pack with simulated all of your equipment you'd need on the field if you're going forward, and a rifle. So the difference was where your hands were, as opposed to when you're jumping the second time. And then you had to let the equipment drop down before you landed on the ground, otherwise you're in trouble.
Yeah, yeah. Because I can imagine you kind of get a relief once you let go of the equipment and you get like a bit more.
Yeah, that was on a rope,
Yeah.
so you can keep it. But another 1,000-foot one at Salt Ash out of Newcastle. That's where you do it all.
Yeah, wow, that's cool. Very cool. Yeah, I'm super excited to go skydiving, but I've got to be honest, I'm pretty scared to do it. Yeah.
Well, the object was I was going to go up as the airborne platoon sergeant at Williamtown. But at that stage, Jackie didn't want to go and live up in Newcastle, so I didn't take the posting.
Okay. So at this stage, I'm going to assume you're probably 27, 28. Am I correct?
Yeah, probably somewhere around about that.
And then after you did the parachuting, what did you do after that? After you finished that course?
Did my sergeant's course.
Yeah.
Then spent some time with Army recruiting, just up to Inverell Trade Fair, and demonstrated some of the equipment, took all the answers and that sort of stuff. Did a radio interview, that sort of basic stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you did your sergeant training, what was the difference between that and your original training? Was it more complicated? Was it more theoretical, practical? How was it different?
It was both. It just elevated your training, like your first aid training had to be elevated, your radio telephone procedure were elevated, your concept of tactics were different because you were then training at the platoon level rather than a section level.
Okay. Yeah, cool. And what did you say was directly after the sergeant? I want to talk about that. What was directly after that?
Then I got out of the regular army, went back to the Army Reserve. I bought a bread run. We ran that for about a year, and I then felt like I wanted to go back in the army again. So I went back in 1973. Okay.
And you did just mention before that Nan didn't want to go to Newcastle when you went to do that. What age did you first meet? Because you're already 27, 28 at that stage.
We first met. She was 19, I was 20.
Okay, so
but I'd met her.
Got back
I'd met her before I went to Vietnam.
before.
Yeah, and then when we came back, she met me at the airport.
Okay.
And we started up again from there. We both married too early.
Too early?
Too young, too early. I hadn't settled down, having accepted coming back from Vietnam. I wanted to drink and all that sort of stuff.
Understandably. You then? Oh, so what age did you have? Who's the oldest? Auntie Nicole.
Nicole. Oh, I would have been probably about. It was 68. So it would have been. I would have been about 22.
Oh wow,
20,
that's so much.
21.
I didn't know you already had kids through this story.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh, that makes it so much more intense for me to understand. Okay, so then I think that Nicole, Dad, and Daz are 3 years apart, so you would have had all three of them almost by the time you were 27, 28, is that right?
Yeah, Darren was born in 73, so 68, 69, then got out and come back in the army again, and Darren come along.
Okay, cool. All right, sorry for the pause. Everyone listening, the same thing happened as always. My camera's died. Everyone at home will be laughing because I have to say it in every single episode. What was the stage you were up to after doing then you got back into being in the army again after taking that break?
I went into, I was offered, because I was being downgraded medically, I was offered only 4 opportunities, and one of those was the Royal Australian Army Ordnance Corps. Mm-hmm. So I accepted that offer, and I was trained as a vehicle storeman.
Okay.
At Bongilla out of Albury Wodonga, and then I was posted to the 21st Supply Battalion, which was at Moorebank, and I had a mundane job there initially. I used to refill fire extinguishers and wash vehicles.
Okay.
And the reason for that was because my licence, that I had, my Army driver's licence, had been issued by military police, and they thought that I might have been a spy for the military police in that particular very big supply depot.
Oh, okay.
So they were checking me out first off.
Yeah.
Before they said, "Hey, look, he's a good guy."
Yeah.
Which I was, because I told them I was. Mm-hmm. And then I moved into vehicle company, and that was armoured and plant equipment. So I had to get my armoured vehicle licences to move vehicles. My plant equipment to move bulldozers, graders, scrapers, tractors, as well as some other equipment.
Yeah.
And I did that for about 12 months, and they offered me I come back in as a private soldier, even though I'd qualified for sergeant. They offered me 1 stripe, and I said, no, look, I've had 2 before. I want 2. They said, well, it's either 1 or nothing.
Okay.
So I put the 1 on, and about a year later, they gave me an opportunity to go down into the transport section as a transport corporal, which I did. And while I was there, I went to Puckapunyal, did the transport supervisor's course, which gave me the qualification to test army drivers for licences.
Okay.
For might be for a forklift, or it might be for a motor scooter, a motorbike, Land Rover, car, truck, and up to bus or articulated vehicle. Which was good.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed that. And then for some reason or other, they put me in the security section because I'd been in military police. But then my posting came through in 77. I went out to Bogan Gate, just out of Parks, as the transport sergeant. Which means I had my own transport yard. I had 2 firemen. I had an ambulance, 2 fire trucks, a staff car for the officer in charge. Other vehicles for the job of towing trailers around the ammunition depot, because that's what it was all about. Okay. We stored mines and artillery ammunition out there in those days, because it was on the international rail line, transnational railway line.
Okay. Where's this international rail line? Near Parks, you were saying?
Goes through Parks, it goes right across to Adelaide and across to Perth, so they could move ammunition from there.
Okay.
All around Australia.
Okay.
And we were there had a married quarter in Parks, so travelled every day to and from Bogan Gate. But it was a really, really good posting. Yeah. It was out in the middle of nowhere, basically. You know, you get your eggs from the local farm. If you wanted some meat, they'd say, rightio, we'll kill that lamb and we'll cut it up for you, or whatever it was. It was good posting.
Yeah, nice. So it was like a very small community base of living over there.
Yeah.
Nice. Do you prefer that than the bigger inner city kind of lifestyle? Just a smaller community?
It depends. I've had some good postings. Adelaide was an excellent posting. And that's a big city. It's not like Sydney or Melbourne. I've been posted to Sydney 3 times, been posted to Melbourne. But the better ones are like living in Wodonga was good.
Yeah.
Working out of Bandiana. Yeah, it was very good.
Yeah, I do find that even here, it's just like the sense of community is so much more, what's the word that best describes it? Like homey, you know? I enjoy coming here because it feels like home, even though it's not home for me. Even when I go back home, there is no sense of community.
Yeah, we don't have the great lineups at the traffic lights. We don't have the delays and all that sort of stuff. But from Bogan Gate, I left there in the end of 78 and got posted to Bandiana for the first time. And that was on promotion to staff sergeant because it was a warrant officer's job, but I hadn't qualified at that stage. So I then went up to the Land Warfare Centre and qualified as a warrant officer, and came back and got promoted to warrant officer class 2 as the unit transport supervisor. There my number of vehicles increased from round about 30 to some 120, 130 vehicles,
Wow.
extra drivers, extra equipment, bigger responsibilities. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Very cool. And how long did you work in the whole transport industry side of the army in total?
Probably maybe 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah, something like that, without going back into greater detail. But while I was as a transport warrant officer, because of my background, I was selected a couple of times to stand in as the regimental sergeant major for the battalion when the RSM was away. And he was away frequently. On one occasion, I was in the job for 6 months.
Oh, wow.
But while I got posted up to the Royal Australian Army Ordnance Corps Centre as an instructor
Yeah.
on the qualification courses for sergeant.
Okay.
So that was good. While I was there, I did the All Arms Air Defence course at the School of Military Engineering. I did the Infantry Regimental Sergeant Major's course in '83. We had a 25% failure rate in that course.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a very intense course. It was 2 months up at Singleton. And it was towards the end of the year, it was very hot and dry up there. So you'd finish a day on the parade ground, you'd just be sweating. Your boots would be wet throughout. A fire hydrant was the best way to clean your boots off.
Yeah.
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 It was an intense course. You had to do a lot of tactics work, military knowledge, military law, ceremonial, how to give lessons, how to do funeral drills, all that sort of stuff.
Okay. Yeah, cool. And was it mostly intense because of the theoretical or because of the practical? What was the reason for such a low pass rate?
Well, basically it was because it was intense, because on one occasion they were going to, one of the terminals had to detect an error in a mess account, because as an RSM you are the president in charge of the mess in that unit, sergeant's mess. So they were going to have a big failure rate, so they went over and over and over and emphasised how we go about doing that. Because if you fail one of those terminals, you fail the course.
Okay.
As simple as that. And the last terminal, you had to do the physical training test. And that built up over the 2 months.
Okay.
But you had to know your military general knowledge had to be known without any reference material. You had to know your military law with only limited reference to the law manual. So you had what was called a where is it book. So everything you needed to know and every question you've asked, you write it in the book.
Okay.
And if you've got a question about drill, you look under D and
Yeah.
that'll give you some references to it.
Yeah, well, yeah, I never think about, when it comes to all the work that you do enrolled in the army, I never think about the theoretical side of things. In my head, I just think of just practical, just drills and discipline and
Yeah,
following.
it is more than that. You need to know the badges of rank. You need to know the rank. You need to know the military hierarchy, the structure, why orders are given, a bit of background about why you're wearing certain parts of your uniform.
Okay.
But while I was posted there, the Ordnance Centre, I was also detached to the Land Warfare Centre in Canungra, up in Queensland, and I instructed up there on the warrant officers course. So at that stage, I'd instructor at Kapooka, I'd instructor at corporal's course, sergeant's course, now warrant officers course.
Yeah,
So I was developing a pattern of being an instructor at all different levels.
Yeah.
And then from there, I was posted to Adelaide to the 41 Supply Battalion as the Regimental Sergeant Major. It was a smaller battalion, and I needed teeth into what I do.
Yeah.
I don't want to sit around an office doing nothing. So I said to the commanding officer, I want to take on the training officer's job too and combine training also with the RSM position. So I did that, and that was very successful. One occasion we changed commanding officers. I was having an interview with my new commanding officer, and he said to me at the end after we discussed a few points, anything else, RSM? I said, sir, your name tag is not being worn correctly and your lanyard is not correct. He said, RSM, that's how I like to wear it. I said, sir, I'm your RSM. I'm providing advice to you. What you do is up to you. The next morning, he corrected those things.
Oh, wow.
And that's the respect that you have to have with your commanding officer.
Okay. So was that, so you're saying that's what you were supposed to do? Or was it like out of the ordinary for you to say that to?
No, that's exactly what you are there to do. You are the regimental sergeant major. You are responsible for discipline in the battalion. You are responsible for the dress and the bearing of your soldiers. And with a good hint, the officers.
Do you think it was a test, or do you think it was a test, part of the interview? No. Oh, yeah, that's crazy. That's cool. That's very cool.
You've got to be able to stand up for what you believe in, and then demonstrate to your commanding officer that is what you are all about.
Yeah.
And you're not prepared to stand back and let little things slip under the carpet.
Yeah, strict by the book is good, because I guess it kind of showed why you were there at the same time. You know, you were there for that reason.
That was a great posting. I loved living in Adelaide, but it was too short. A vacancy appeared back in Bandiana, and so they posted me back to Bandiana as the RSM. And again, I got involved very heavily in the training aspect, physical fitness. I got to a stage where the soldiers living in the barracks, I thought they needed something to do, so I got them involved in the local volleyball comp, and I joined them.
Yeah,
I said to the adjutant who looks after the officers, I said, we're going to get the soldiers involved in something more than just their drinking and mucking around. I said, their accommodation, we're going to allow them to have alcohol in their end room, but they are responsible to make sure everything is tidy and no problems. Any problems with that, we cut it off.
Okay.
We did regular inspections, barrack inspections, make sure their rooms are tidy, clean, and we had no problems at all.
Okay.
You give them that respect, give them that sort of opportunity, and if they fail, there's a consequence.
Yeah.
And they then look after each other.
Yeah.
To make sure that they don't ruin it for others.
I bet everyone really, really appreciated that. And I'm surprised that they actually were able to keep things as clean and tidy with the alcohol in the room, to be honest. Very surprised.
It's no different to kids. All kids want is consistency. And you're consistent with them and you show them respect. It's a two-way street. You don't have to stand back and say, I'm the regimental sergeant major, you'll do what I'm telling you to do. They've got to respect you.
Yeah, I noticed that even within my trade, because I was working as a supervisor at the last company. If I wasn't in the mix doing the shitty jobs with everyone, then they're not going to listen to me at the end of the day. I have to lead by example. Yeah. And just by having authority, it doesn't mean that you have the most push over everyone. It means that you have the most responsibility. You also have to do all the work as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's cool how that kind of just trickles across all workforces and all forms of life.
You got the key words there, lead by example. If you're not prepared to do that, don't expect your soldiers to do it.
Yeah. And I actually had a quote yesterday. I think I was watching a video. He said, would you, if you were working in a supermarket, would you really want to take advice from someone who didn't know how to use the register if you were a cash out person, and your boss comes and tells you what to do and then asks for how do I use this thing? I've never used one of these before. You want a supervisor and a trainer and an employer who knows how to do your job instead of just telling you what to do.
But it can't always be the case though.
Can't always be the case.
No, you can't have every single supervisor, line manager or whatever know how to use the checkout. They've got their responsibilities. There might be a department manager, or they don't know how to sweep the floor probably. Someone has to, but it's common sense.
Yeah,
but it's that balance again.
Yeah, you're right. And maybe when a company or any organisation gets big enough, you have your men in charge who know how to do the people's role underneath them, and they know how to do the people's role underneath them. So the guy at the top might not necessarily know how to do the role at the bottom. But it's good to have influence and instruction from someone who does know how to do your job and is willing to do it at the same time.
Yeah, there's one example I remember when Ansett Airlines were flying. Reg Ansett was their boss, and once a week or so he'd come and work on the desk and understand what it was like working on the desk. That's a great example.
Yeah, it is.
It's a great example for the subordinates to know that their boss is sharing their responsibility and the pain they get from they get angry customers and computers go down and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, they can understand. Yeah. Were you still drinking at this time, or did you give up drinking when you enforced this responsibility on everyone?
I gave it up in '83
Yeah.
when I was up at the Land Warfare Centre instructing on the warrant officers course.
Okay.
They needed someone at night they could talk to who wasn't drunk. Because a lot of the other instructors up there had, I am superior than thou. You don't need to talk to me, you're a student. Well, it doesn't always work that way. You can do better.
Yeah.
But back to Bandiana, when I was the RSM at 31 Supply Battalion, we did a lot of physical activities. I had a commanding officer who was right into military skills training, and so you just weren't working in a storehouse or you were a clerk. He wanted you to become a soldier too and make sure your skills were up to level. So it was nicknamed 31 RAR, which was Royal Australian Regiment, like a battalion. When I first went there, he and I went away for a weekend together, climbed Mount Bogon and got down and just sat down and talked about how we were going to run the unit.
Yeah.
So we had that relationship.
Yeah. Okay.
Mike Buick was his name, an excellent commanding officer. And from there, I got selected to be the Regimental Sergeant Major of the command. From there, I would have gone to the school, the Ordnance School, but I jumped that position and went to a level 3 position, which was the RSM of the command, which was in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And the command, that was 4 years. And our command, logistic command, is spread all over Australia. You know, the ammunition companies, all the major transport units, all the workshops, all came under our command. So for the 4 years that we lived in Melbourne, I travelled out of every month 2 weeks away somewhere.
Okay.
And we might be up at a workshop up in Queensland or down in Tasmania at a workshop or a supply company or a transport yard. Probably a very, very interesting posting. You worked on a higher level. You're mixing with my boss was a general. He had a couple of brigadiers under him, and he had a whole heap of colonels, lieutenant colonels, majors, and it was just a very, very great opportunity.
Yeah.
And of course, during that posting, I was fortunate enough to be awarded the Medal of the Order of Australia.
Wow.
For my service as the Regimental Sergeant Major for the command. It was one of those things where you had to be spot on. You know, you had to give your advice to the general, had to be without question, had to be right.
Okay.
And for example, there was a brigadier coming up for a presentation. He'd just been awarded his medal. He had it on, the ribbon, and it was the wrong way over. So I quickly took him aside and told him, when he had to speak to the general said, look, good to see it's the right way around.
Yeah.
But things like that, you know, you can invent and make things better for soldiers because you're in that position. We'd go and visit a unit and the general would go off and do his bit. I'd go off and do my bit looking after the soldiers and that. And the RSM in that unit would say, we'll go down to the workshop. I said, I don't want to go to the workshop, RSM. I want to go to your barracks, your soldiers' barracks, and I want to make sure their washing machines, all their dryers, all their equipment is working properly because that is your responsibility. I don't care about the production, how many cars they're servicing, how many buses they've repaired or whatever. One of the colonels will work out that, not me.
So your responsibility was for the people. Is that
soldiers.
The soldiers, yeah. That was your responsibility, making sure their welfare was correct and their presentation and the way.
Yeah, but I got involved. We had parades twice a year, beginning of the year, welcome parade, and one at the end of the year we'd do medals and that sort of stuff. And we had so many high-level people. I had one company of officers, one company of warrant officers, another company of staff sergeants and below. And it was great.
Yeah.
Great opportunity. I loved that experience.
Yeah.
And then from that particular posting, I had 4 years. I got offered I had nowhere else to go. I'd reached the pinnacle of my career. I needed to then I was then offered a commission as the captain.
Okay.
So I went through all the testing and that sort of stuff, and I was accepted. And I was offered they said, where do you want to go? I said, well, look, Wodonga's good, Bandiana, because I've got a house in Wodonga. So I went back up there, and I had 4 postings in Bandiana as a captain, because you do 6 years as a captain, then you're eligible for promotion to major. And I then had 4 years as a major in charge of second in charge of a distribution division. We had transport wing that trained all the drivers for Army, Navy, Air Force, catering school, ordnance school that trained all the parachute riggers and the explosive people, that sort of stuff. And maritime wing up in Townsville, looked after the small boats and all that. Mm-hmm. So I looked after each of those subunits during that time. Mm-hmm. And from there, I then turned to the magic old age where I had to retire from the regular Army.
Yep.
And then they gave me an age extension to stay on the Army Reserve, so I did another 8 years.
Yeah, cool.
And that's when I took on the museums role.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Very cool. Did you find it challenging with all this moving around and travelling? Did you find that to be a challenge?
No, because every time I moved was on promotion.
Okay.
To a new job, more exciting. But when I look back and I asked Jackie and the kids, it was difficult because in those days, an Army wife didn't find getting a job easy because you're only in town for 2 years, you'll be moving on. Mm-hmm. But she managed to pick up a couple of things, did some courses and other bits and pieces. Mm-hmm. Then when I spoke to Nicole about her education, we were in Adelaide when she had finished high school and then had to went to Deakin University. So, that's a bit of a stretch. And then we came back to Bandiana and she was still in Deakin. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Makes it a bit hard because they're changing schools, and some go between states at different ages, at different levels.
Well, I understand it might have been difficult at the time for people to move, because I even found that difficult when we moved from public school to private school, and it was a 30-40 minute drive, wherever it was, might not even been that much, but I did find that challenging. So did my brother, so did my sister. But as time goes on now, we're more than grateful for it because we ended up where we are today.
Yeah.
And I think everyone is grateful for all the time you served in the Army, As I said, you're my role model. You're giving me influence and inspiration, and Dad says the same thing, and Carl says the same thing. It's very awesome. So I'm glad to know that you didn't find it challenging, but you do understand how it could have been for some people, You're sympathetic, empathetic in that way. Is that the right way to say it?
Yeah, well, see, in those days, you moved. Your family moved with you. There was no question about it. Mm-hmm. Over the years, it's changed. If you've got kids in year 11 and 12, you don't have to move. Mm-hmm. But if you move to a larger city like Sydney, you've got alternative opportunities for postings.
Okay.
There are such things as married separated postings, which I've never had, but I would never want one, where both the husband and wife are both in the Army.
Okay.
One could be in Brisbane, one down in Puckapunyal. Mm-hmm. You just can't hop around the weekend and go home. Mm-hmm. It's too far.
Yeah.
So they're married separated postings, and they have a choice. They can do that, but they have to give a priority. Which career has got the priority? Is it he or she? And they try and then fill in for the other one if they can.
Okay.
Because this one might be a captain, and to be promoted to major, they have to go somewhere else. Then they try and find another spot for either the he or she. It could be a she has got the priority posting.
I actually think I know someone who's in a similar position. She is in the Air Force though, and her and her husband are both in it. And I believe they're in a similar situation. I just never heard it the way you explained it before, but I'm pretty sure one of them has got the priority, and while they travel and the other person fills in their role, I'm pretty sure she has the priority, which is, I never knew that was the reason why I thought though, but it makes sense.
Yeah, you're there for a job, and the job's first up. If you can't do the job, you're out.
Yeah, I get you. Do you think that there's, do relationships that are in the Army together, are they necessarily stronger or not as strong because they're spending so much time together?
It makes it difficult. I feel sorry for those that are in separated postings.
Yeah.
For example, there could be too much influence. Mm-hmm. It could be brought on by alcohol and could be a whole bunch of different things happening to people. They could stray, not knowing what's happening at the other end, where they're going out, they're staying home, they're doing whatever. It's not an easy situation. You need a good, solid relationship, otherwise it won't work. It just can't work.
Yeah.
And when the Defence Force decided to send a lot more soldiers up to Darwin, it makes it hard, because the single men that were in Holsworthy might have got on with a local girl and then took them with them up there, either married or not. And when you're up there in those areas like that, you're away a fair bit of the unit on operations, on exercises. You might be overseas. And where's their family? Back down south. It does make it hard.
Yeah.
But that's the way you've got to accept and face the life of being in the service.
Yeah.
That's Army, Navy, Air Force. Police, you can move anywhere in the state, but the Defence Force move anywhere in Australia or overseas.
Yeah, I get you. So it does find difficulty in relationships serving in the army, for sure. Definitely would. But then I also noticed, it might just be from my influence on movies and things like that, but it also can create strong relationships as well. Having someone almost like waiting for someone to get back. Do you find that a lot of strong relationships go through it?
Yeah, it's interesting because at one stage as a captain, I was the Army Community Service Officer at Bandiana. And before someone deploys to go overseas, you have to interview them to make sure they've got a family structure that's going to stand up while the person's away, either male or female. And before that person comes back, you interview the family again, about a month out. You say, okay, now so-and-so's coming home, because the oldest boy, for example, or oldest girl might have had a routine putting the garbage bins out and bringing them back in again. Something simple as that. When dad comes home or mum comes home, they'll take on that responsibility again. And that person will feel like, oh, I'm not needed now. So it's a matter of trying to get the family back into line again and understanding that the person may have been exposed to whatever while they were away. They may have come back different if it was a combat situation, or if it's just a 4-month posting to the United Kingdom. They might bring back a whole bunch of presents.
Yeah. But I understand they want to come back and get back into the way things were before they left. And are you saying the army accommodates? Is that who's accommodating to make sure this happens? Is it the army who's interviewing the families and things? Yeah,
there are a number of organisations set up to support you. If you're a large unit being deployed, there's an organisation within the unit there that look after those that are left behind. In most cases, they're generally the battalion deploys. Most of them are male these days.
Okay.
But there are females in the battalions now.
When you got to working in the army, what was into the Army Museum? What was the criteria you had to have to get that position? Like, is it only because you were in the position you were in, you were able to run that museum, or could anyone with a lower ranking be able to do that too?
The army have a number of when you're in, you get a job. You get one main job.
Yeah.
But you also get what's called an extra regimental appointment. So you might have been given the job as extra regimental appointment as the treasurer in the officers' mess, or the secretary in the sergeant's mess, which you do in your own time around that. Or you might have been appointed the supervising officer of the soldiers' club, which I've been. Or you might have been appointed the supervising officer of the museum. But I got involved with that museum earlier than that. I've been involved with the museum for well over 30 odd years.
Okay.
So I became the supervising officer of the museum, and that then turned into, when I got into the Army Reserve, they established the first time a manager's position, and I became the first manager at the major level. All the managers now are all majors. There's been 1, 2, 3, 4 since I've left, and they've all got different skills. They've all got different enthusiasm for the particular job. I have a criteria. If I do a job, it's 110% or you don't do it. All right. So I was determined to turn the museum from just the one building, restricted hours, to bigger than that.
Yeah.
So which we did. We changed the name. We integrated other collections from Puckapunyal, North Bandiana, Seymour, and changed the name. Then integrated more from the Army School of Health down in Portsea, and gave it a really strong reputation. From one building, end up with 8 buildings.
Oh, wow.
Increased the vehicle number to about 120, 150 in the collection. Set up a maintenance area where I could, and we had no staff in those days, so eventually I got Army Reserve staff allocated. So then got a captain as a 2IC. I then appointed a number of warrant officers looking after different things. Vehicle mechanics, recovery mechanic, so we could get some vehicles operational and use them for various parades and all that. It was probably one of the best times in my life.
Okay.
Because to see it just grow, but you had to kick a few heads to get it done. Yeah, you took a lot of shortcuts. Put my hand on my heart, and everything I did was for the collection, for the museum. We got involved in tourism with it. It was pretty strong, the numbers. We got involved with the school groups. They didn't have to go to Canberra for presentations. My military staff ended up going up to about 25. But I couldn't fill all the positions because they all come, you got to find funding for all of those. Yeah, so it was really, really good.
Oh, I enjoyed my experience as a kid going there. It was amazing. It was probably some of the most fun I remember having as a kid, going to those museums, and just because everything I'd only seen in the video games I was playing on the PlayStation, things like that. And yeah, I'm so grateful for those experiences, and I would like to go again, to be honest, soon. I haven't been in a long time.
The next time you come down, we'll go out there. You had to have a particular reason why people want to go there. So I had one of the best uniform collections in the country, one of the best weapon collections in the country, one of the biggest and best Land Rover collections in the country, ceremonial vehicles for funerals, the biggest collection in the country. You know, you just keep collecting and putting them on display, and increasing your armoured vehicle display, increasing your artillery pieces, so people can see a whole bunch of things, setting up things that would interest all members of the family, not only kids, but teenagers, adults, male and female. Otherwise, it's just a museum.
Yeah.
And people think of museums as old stuff.
Yeah.
But you can tell the story and educate people.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah, and even the presentation and the layout, just because my memory's not too big on all of it, just the vehicles, to be honest, and the weaponry. That was probably the most outstanding thing to me as a kid. But I remember it was just a presence unlike any other museum I've been to. It was nicely lit, the little things, the cleanliness, the colour, everything was amazing. So you did a wonderful, wonderful job. And I didn't understand it got to 8 different buildings. That's pretty crazy.
There's storage areas, things like those, maintenance areas, extra vehicles that have got to go somewhere. And
Did any of the things in the museum run, or is everything made sure it doesn't run before you take it there?
no, quite a few of the vehicles operate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
But we used to take them for various parades and all that. Well, that's cut down now. It's been restricted a lot because people just haven't got the staff to do it. Because you just can't take a vehicle off the display. You need a vehicle mechanic to go over it and certify that it's safe to use, tyres, brakes, all the fluids. And you just can't drop all the oils and fluids out of all the vehicles.
Yeah.
And, you know, once you put a main battle tank into place, it's not easy to move because you remember the posts are in place like that. See, it's a World War II building.
Yeah.
And that's also part of the history of the building.
Okay.
But the future plans is to relocate the museum and build it up more than it is. But it's all a matter of funding.
And would you be looking to move it far? Like how far would you like to move the building?
The issue is security. At the moment, to go in the gate, you have to go down through the defence area, and that becomes a property if they have to lock down or keep people out. It'll go down towards, there's an army theatre, it'll go in behind that, but you'll have direct access from that defence gate. People say, I should take it off defence property, but you can't because you've got weapons. They all belong to defence, they've got to be secured.
Yeah, that makes sense. You can't just have it easily break-inable. Yeah.
And it's not cheap. You know, you're talking several $1 million to do all this.
Yeah.
Multiple $1 million.
I can imagine. Was that your most favourite time throughout your employment in the army, working in the museum?
I found it hard after 46 years, narrowing down my best experience. Every aspect of it has built on another opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just being a corporal instructor at Recruit Training Battalion has got its own skill level you build up on. It develops your confidence. And then you step up the ladder to a sergeant, and then a staff sergeant, warrant officer, RSM in particular. If I had to isolate one, I'd probably say the 4 years as the RSM of Logistic Command, because of the national exposure it gave me.
Mm-hmm.
Twice in that time, the general would run two different generals, would run a exercise, and we would go to Cape York, and he'd take all of his senior officers, colonels, only one or two lieutenant colonels, all the brigadiers in the military districts, all that up there. It was a big deal, and I was the only soldier. Mm-hmm. And the idea was, if we had to set up a force of 10,000 up there, how could we maintain them? So the problems would be bakery, fuel, bread, any other food you needed rather than ration packs, so it was fresh, like milk. Mm-hmm. How do you repair your vehicles? Up there, a lot of mines are underground, mm-hmm. so you'd have to put your vehicles underground to get them repaired. That's where the workshops were. Mm-hmm. Then how do you transport them up there? How do you maintain them? So they were interesting exercises. That'd be a week. And another time we went across to Western Australia and did the same thing. We had to put a force into Broome or to in that area. How we maintain them? What's available to us? And they'd run scenarios and they'd do this and do that, and it was good. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and you'd have your own Hercules aircraft dedicated to that particular task. Mm-hmm. That's all we did.
Yeah, cool. When you got to that position where you couldn't get any higher than before you went to the museum, who were you taking instruction from at that point?
As a regimental sergeant major, there was level 1, which is the unit RSM. Then you go up to a school level, which is 2. 3 is the command level. So it could be Land Command, Training Command, Logistic Command, or the Royal Military College. And then above that was the RSM of the Army only. Mm-hmm. All right. They'd already just filled the RSM of the Army job. Mm-hmm. I couldn't go back to the corps school, which I wanted to. My head of corps, the brigadier, said, no, you're not going back. You're up in level 3, that's it. So I was going to go into the Training Command panel. They do a panel for the job. Mm-hmm. And the only thing that would have got me the Training Command job would be my combat badge. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't have been my corps badge. Okay. Because they don't put logistic corps in an arms corps environment. They're pretty strong. So then I was accepted the offer of the commission as a captain, went to Bandiana as the training officer for the Ordnance Centre, had 2 years there, went down to the head of corps, the Directorate of Ordnance, in the Major's job there for 2 years, and then crossed to Army Community Service for a year. And then that structure was changing. And then I went back to the Directorate of Ordnance for the final year as their project officer. And then I was due then for promotion. So I got promoted into, I got asked, the head of corps said to me, where do you want to go? I said, well, I've been offered this or offered, I could have gone to Brisbane as the SO2 ceremonial, or I could have gone to Canberra ceremonial, or I could have gone to Brisbane in the Defence Community Organisation, or stay in Bandiana. I had a house here. At that stage, she was working in town. So we decided to stay in Bandiana. Mm-hmm. So I had 4 years in that job before I had to leave the regular army. Yeah. They have compulsory retiring ages. Mm-hmm. And then I went to the Army Reserve.
So when you worked in the Army Museum, why did you step out of that? Like, what was that decision about?
I was turning 63,
Yeah.
and at that stage I needed to look after my health. And under Department of Veterans Affairs arrangements, to become eligible for a TPI pension, I needed to stop work. But I was not able to continue on because I was having trouble with my back. Whilst every year we had to do our annual military tests, skills, rifle shooting, etc., I'd lay down behind my rifle, but I couldn't get back up again. I had to get someone to lift me up again. I was having trouble with my back. So subsequently, I ended up having a disc replacement in my back. So that's the reason I got out.
Okay. And was your plan at that stage to retire completely from working, or
No,
it wasn't?
no. I was going to volunteer at the museum as a volunteer, but that didn't work out. Jackie and I at that stage separated. I needed to move into Albury, where I lived in a retirement village, and then I joined I was headhunted to become a councillor.
Oh, you were headhunted for that?
On the Albury City Council by the mayor and the general manager.
Okay.
So I went on, and I went on for the first 4 years. Got re-elected again for another 4 years, which became 4 years, became 5 years, became 5 years and 3 months because of COVID and all that. So I did 9 years and 3 months as a councillor. Enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy working with some of the councillors who didn't look at big picture. They looked at self and doing dirty deals.
Okay.
I was for 8 years, I was the chairman of the local traffic committee, working with police, the local member's office, that sort of stuff. I had other appointments that I did also. Then I contested the next election, but down the line a bit so I wouldn't get re-elected to help someone else on. And then I'm happy that I'm not on again.
Okay.
But I'm still president of the Albury RSL.
Yeah, wow. Okay. At what stage did you meet Beth through the council? How did you two meet each other?
Through RSL.
Through RSL.
Beth was the police commander, and she was invited to a renaming of a memorial walk, Soldiers Memorial Walk in Laguna. So she came along there and with that and met the mayor while she was there. And it was one of those things, we didn't see each other till something else happened. And we met each other, and Beth's husband had died at that stage. I'd been divorced. So I simply said to her, if you need anyone to talk to at any stage at all over the situation, we'll have a coffee or something like that. And then progressively, as I needed a partner for a council function or something, or she needed a partner to go to something, we'd join up for that. And just eventually we grew together.
Yeah, okay, cool. Okay, I did want to talk about this subject as well, but I'm going to backtrack a little bit before I get to it, to working in the council. So you're saying your role there was to look over traffic communication? Is that how you described it?
No, I was the chairman of the local traffic committee.
Traffic committee, okay.
Yeah, so that looked at speed limits, traffic flow in Albury, Laguna and Lavington, of course, the sequencing of traffic lights, the speed limits, all that's the responsibility of Roads and Maritime Service. But you have your staff do all that preparation work.
Yeah.
How many vehicles crossed this? How many vehicles sped through there or did that? How about a bus stop here? Can we put no parking there? Can we change the time limits of the parking? That sort of stuff.
Okay. And didn't you work in regard to helping with the army memorials being built and things like that?
Yes. I guess I combined my RSL role with the update of the Albury War Memorial.
Okay, so that was through the RSL, not through being on the council?
No, it was both.
Okay.
I could push it through the council side, and we were successful in getting $1.35 million for that project.
Wow.
And updated it to one of the best regional memorials in Australia. Now I'm working on a World War II bowl, which was built 70 years ago, and I'm going to a funding announcement activity tomorrow week with some funding. We're setting up a covered children's play area a covered exercise area and some new landscaping.
Okay.
These are the projects that I enjoy driving.
Yeah. Okay. Did you find it rewarding working within the council just in the role you were in before, without the memorial side of things?
Oh yeah. No. It's making a change for the communities, and that's good.
Okay.
Providing get other councils to think a big picture.
Yeah. Okay. So the part that wasn't necessarily that good was just some of the people that you were surrounded with, not the job itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Good to know. Now, you're opening my eyes a little bit about what an RSL actually is, because I didn't know anything to do with how they help with infrastructure or memorials or anything like that. I thought an RSL was just a club that was designed for entertainment of... Originally, I thought it was originally for soldiers, and now it's kind of opened up the doors. So what is an RSL?
Well, that's a great question, because it's a question that's been on people's lips for quite some time. The RSL brand and the RSL club are two different things.
Okay.
The club, we don't have an RSL club in Albury.
Okay.
You have an RSL club in Sydney or any other things. And they run food, poker machines, all that sort of stuff. The RSL is separate to that, because the confusion with people, they think RSL is old men and drunks.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
We're trying to get rid of that, because we own the brand, but the clubs are separate.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do as a sub-branch, we don't have a bar. We have a monthly meeting. We provide a meal there. We look after the welfare of our veterans and family.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a storeroom. Over the years, I've changed the structure in the 10 years at that place, and we've got clothing set aside. Not so much clothing, but we've got bedding set aside for homeless veterans.
Mm-hmm.
If they turn up on our doorstep and they want some accommodation, we're able to provide them some short-term accommodation, pay for it or wherever it happens to be, and a bit of food. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're all about. We have welfare officers. We have them now currently trying to get them involved in bowls. We've got a lot of older members that are either housebound or in hospitals or nursing homes. Mm-hmm. But a sub-branch is different to a club.
Mm-hmm.
A club can provide funding for the sub-branch.
Okay.
So you've got to watch the ownership and the relationship, how that works.
Mm-hmm.
Now, RSL sub-branch members cannot be on the boards of clubs.
Okay.
It's seen to be a conflict of interest.
Okay. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, well, I had no idea. That's crazy. So the RSL brand itself, you have one here. Is there any other places that have the accommodation that you provide for homeless veterans and stuff?
Oh, everyone will have something that they're responsible for. Mm-hmm. There's a part of the RSL, the state branch has got funding that can look after some of these people.
Okay.
Yeah, but generally DVA, Department of Veterans Affairs, can help a bit there and there.
Okay. Yeah, cool. That's good to know. We did talk about that period where you and Nan split up, and then you ended up finding and meeting Beth, and now our families have merged together, and honestly I couldn't have been happier with the merging of the two families. So there's a bit of stuff I want to talk to in regards to that, but I often talk about with people I sit down with the hard feelings of a ending relationship and how to get through them. And I'm curious as to what you used in order to find the light at the end of the tunnel after what I'm assuming was the first proper relationship ending, first proper breakup. Am I right when I say that? Was you and Nan splitting up your first breakup?
Yeah, really, yeah. And it wasn't what I'd expected. I didn't see it coming. Mm-hmm. I spent far too much time working than my marriage.
Okay.
I was always available for the phone call if the alarm went off. If the group coming through and they wanted to spend some time at the museum, I'd go out there and do it. Mm-hmm. So I was neglecting my marriage where I should have been looking at the other way around, trying to get that work social balance right. Mm-hmm. But anyway, what we determined to do was to make sure that we had an amicable relationship arrangement, and you can see that now.
Yeah.
All right. You saw her come along to Christmas.
Yeah.
And that's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's fabulous. She and Beth get on well.
Mm-hmm.
There's no comparing notes. We didn't steal from anyone, from anybody. There's no relationships, that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
When I had to sell our house at Barranduda to set Jackie up in the house in Geelong, that was a regret because I had the big verandas and had the swimming pool around it, and I loved it. You know, I know you kids loved it too.
Yeah.
But that's the price you pay. So I then moved into a retirement village, and I thought I was going to live in there and die in there. So it was virtually 3 years later that Beth and I really got together, and we've been blessed, the both of us, by the way the two families have come together. There's no one not liking Beth or no one not liking me because you've taken so and so's place or whatever. That was never the intention. And that was the good thing we did on that first cruise, was to get the families to meet each other. Not everyone went, of course, that's the way it goes. And then the second cruise, now we've got the third one planned now.
Yeah, I know. I'm super excited for that. And again, the opportunity you give us to spend time together is so awesome. And you set an example for me and everyone else that if you work hard and you do your job and you do the right thing and you pay your taxes, in the end, you get to just not only live your own amazing life, but provide an amazing entertainment for everyone else as well. So I thank you for painting that picture for me personally. And I'm also curious as to what you use to get through those like the shit days in the beginning that everyone goes through after a breakup. What was your driving factor to just keep pushing through?
Well, wasn't drinking for a start, and that's the failure a lot of people make.
Okay.
They bury their sorrows in a bottle, and that doesn't work. I just accepted the fact it was going to be like this, and that was it.
Okay.
Yeah, there was no hard feeling.
Yeah.
That doesn't help.
I think that you're definitely right when you say a lot of people have a substance problem that results in making things a lot harder. I didn't think about it from that perspective, so you're right about that. When did you first start traveling? Is my next question.
I guess
outside of work. Outside of work.
I was going to say the 12th of December '67. I got a free trip to Vietnam.
Yeah. And
then I got Taiwan and Singapore also. Jesus, that's a tough question. I can't remember when, but I'll tell you what, we've done a lot of travel since then.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I'm at a stage where I have to go back and get a job.
yeah, he's travelled all year round, and it's amazing. It's so awesome to watch. And in regards to traveling, I want to know, is there anywhere that you would recommend everyone should go in particular?
No, not everyone, because everyone's got their own individual needs and places. The place we did enjoy was driving around Ireland, north and south, and that was great, and we want to go back there again. We want to do a road trip around the British Isles, but you need to spend about a month or so doing that. The trips we've got planned ahead are all exciting. We're now trying to decide how we're going to spend next Christmas.
Okay.
I don't want to be sitting around the house there cooking a meal. And all your kids are doing something else that year. So we're now tossing around what we're going to do. Beth's got some ideas. I got some ideas.
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens. But we've got plans for this year: South America, Antarctica. We're back into Europe a couple of times, going to Dracula's Castle. 3 river cruises, or 2 river cruises. We've got 21 days on the Mediterranean. I've always wanted to go to Gibraltar, so that we've chosen that cruise. Then I think we're going back this year to Bali for a week. And then we've got, next year, we've got a couple of cruises booked already. And we've already booked 10 cabins for September 24 for the family again.
Alaska, yeah.
So I'm definitely going back to work.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't understand how that's possible that you don't go to work. It's crazy. I think Beth said there'd be 24 of us going to Alaska. That's a big group. That's amazing. It's so good. And again, I find the merging of the two families to be such a bonus in my life. It's something that I feel like it's an experience that most people don't even get to ever experience, and I feel lucky too. How was your mindset during the merging? Were you nervous, excited? How did it feel when everyone came together for the first time?
No, I just took it from day to day as it was. Yeah, and I've met Beth's extended family. You know, so it's been amazing.
It has.
Honestly, been amazing, and the relationship is just beautiful.
Yeah.
And I'm so fortunate that you get a second chance in life.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And I tell everyone about you and Beth and the travelling and the families coming together, and everyone, I hope everyone listening doesn't think I'm being too braggy about it, but I feel so lucky to be a part of the Doxey family, honestly. I love being a Doxey.
Good.
Yeah, it really is. Well, I'll tell you what, I've gotten through most of the questions I wanted to ask on this episode, and I'm definitely going to put a whole another list of questions for episode 2 in the future. But I have one final question that I do ask everyone that comes on, and that's, what's a piece of advice that you would say to someone when they come to you because they're feeling a bit depressed, maybe because they're feeling lost?
Interesting question. I'd need to know a bit about their background and why.
Mm-hmm.
But and the other question, are you feeling suicidal, is most important.
Okay.
And then you have to do something with it one way or the other.
Yeah, I understand. Suicidal is definitely the most important question in regarding to that. But when we're talking background, I'm talking in the sense as in people just feel lost, as in like they're not sure what to do with their life. You know what I mean? Is there anything in particular that would be a good advice for that?
Well, it depends on their age and their background again, but there are people they can go and speak with. You can listen to them, and that's what people want, is a good listener for a start. You can give them options, right? And then it's purely up to them after that. You can follow up after on, but you can give them a contact. You know, your own life experience, you can talk to them about it. If it's an alcohol-based problem, I can talk about that. If it's drugs, you can talk about that. If it's relationship problems, you can talk about that. It all depends what it is.
Yeah, I'm getting a sense of, like, you really have to speak to the right person regarding the situation. Is that what you're saying? Like, if you don't have the experience, like, maybe push them in the direction of someone that has the experience to talk about it.
Yeah, you need to be comfortable in what you're going to say. You need to be comfortable and about how you say it, and don't dismiss anything they've got to say.
Yeah, all right, beautiful. Well, I love the answer, and I thank you very much for giving me your time today, Grandpa. I really do appreciate it. I've learned a lot about you. You've definitely opened my eyes for a lot of things as well, and I'm very excited to come back and do another episode in the future.
And I'm more than pleased to have you back, Jake. Well done.
All right, beautiful.
I see the way you turn yourself around. Love it.
Thank you.
Shawty catch a vibe, yeah, I had to put her on. Bought a two-seater, yeah, we heading for the sun. Shawty going high, I ain't tripping for the funds. Yeah, I won't start, I ain't tripping, I'm a stunt.